All right, so today we're talking about a question that sounds simple, but is actually incredibly complicated: Iran versus the world's superpowers. Who really wins? Because when people imagine this conflict, they picture a traditional war, jets in the sky, missiles flying, armies clashing. And on paper, the answer might seem obvious. Countries like the United States and its allies have massive military budgets, advanced technology, and global alliances. Compared to that, Iran appears outmatched. But geopolitics is rarely that simple. First, let's talk about military power. The United States and its partners have some of the most advanced military systems on Earth: stealth aircraft, precision missiles, and sophisticated missile defense systems. In recent clashes, most Iranian missiles and drones were intercepted by defensive systems, demonstrating a clear technological advantage for the coalition. However, Iran's strategy has never been about winning a conventional war. Instead, Iran focuses on asymmetric warfare, a strategy where a weaker power finds creative ways to challenge a stronger opponent. This includes missile attacks, cyber operations, and alliances with regional groups that extend Iran's influence across the Middle East. Second, there's the economic dimension. For years, Iran has faced sanctions targeting its oil exports, banking system, and technology access. These sanctions significantly reduced its economic growth and international trade. But here's the twist: economic warfare cuts both ways. When tensions rise in the Persian Gulf, global energy markets react instantly. The Strait of Hormuz, one of the most important oil shipping routes in the world, carries around 20% of global oil supplies. Any disruption there can cause massive spikes in global energy prices. That means even countries far away, Europe, Asia, and beyond, feel the consequences. Third, there's the question of political endurance. History shows that smaller nations under pressure sometimes survive simply by refusing to collapse. Even after heavy strikes on leadership and infrastructure, Iran's political system has shown resilience and continues functioning. And that brings us to the most important point. In modern geopolitics, victory is not always about destroying your opponent. Sometimes it's about lasting longer than them. If a superpower spends billions of dollars, destabilizes global markets, and still fails to completely eliminate its adversary, can it truly claim victory? At the same time, if Iran suffers economic hardship, infrastructure damage, and international isolation, can it claim victory either? So the real answer might be this: there may be no clear winner. The superpowers may dominate technologically and militarily. Iran may endure through strategy, geography, and political resilience. But the true cost is often paid by ordinary people, global stability, and the international economy. And that leaves us with a bigger question than the title of this speech. Not who will win, but whether anyone actually wins at all. When people look at a potential conflict between Iran and the world's major superpowers, one of the first things analysts point to is the clear imbalance in military power. Modern superpowers, particularly countries like the United States and its closest allies, possess some of the most technologically advanced military systems ever developed. Their defense budgets are enormous, often reaching hundreds of billions of dollars each year, allowing them to maintain large professional armies, advanced research programs, and global military bases. This financial and technological advantage translates into powerful capabilities such as stealth aircraft, aircraft carriers, long-range precision missiles, satellite surveillance, cyber warfare units, and sophisticated missile defense systems. Iran, on the other hand, operates with a significantly smaller military budget and fewer advanced platforms. Its air force relies largely on older aircraft, many of which date back decades. Compared with modern fighter jets used by Western powers, these systems are less advanced in terms of radar, stealth, and combat capabilities. In a direct, large-scale conventional battle involving air power, naval strength, and advanced weapon systems, Iran would likely face major challenges against countries that possess superior technology and resources. Another important factor is the network of alliances that superpowers maintain around the world. The United States, for example, cooperates with numerous partner nations through military agreements and security partnerships. Organizations like NATO bring together multiple countries that can coordinate defense strategies, share intelligence, and combine military forces during a crisis. This means that in a major conflict, Iran might not face just one powerful opponent, but potentially a coalition of several technologically advanced nations working together. These alliances also provide access to shared logistics, military bases, and global supply networks, giving superpowers the ability to deploy troops and equipment rapidly across different regions. Iran's military, by contrast, operates mostly within its own geographic boundaries and has far fewer formal defense alliances that would provide comparable large-scale military support. Another critical aspect of Iran's strategy in dealing with powerful opponents is its reliance on what experts call asymmetric warfare. This approach is commonly used when a country recognizes that it cannot match a stronger adversary in traditional military strength, such as advanced air forces, large naval fleets, or cutting-edge weapon systems. Instead of competing directly in those areas, the weaker side looks for alternative strategies that can create pressure, uncertainty, and strategic challenges for the stronger power. Iran has spent decades developing capabilities that fit this approach. One of the most visible examples is its investment in ballistic missiles and drones. These weapons allow Iran to strike targets at long distances without relying on expensive fighter aircraft or large bombing campaigns. Missile and drone systems can be produced at a lower cost compared with modern jets, and they can be launched in large numbers, which can overwhelm defense systems or force opponents to spend significant resources intercepting them. Another major component of Iran's asymmetric strategy involves its relationships with allied groups and militias across the Middle East. These groups operate in different countries and regions, extending Iran's influence beyond its own borders. Through these connections, Iran can apply pressure indirectly, creating multiple fronts of tension that complicate the strategic calculations of stronger military powers. Instead of a single, predictable battlefield, conflicts can become spread across various regions, making them harder to control and manage. Geography also plays a role in this strategy. Iran's location near key waterways, including the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz, gives it the ability to threaten important global shipping routes. Even limited disruptions in these areas can affect international trade and energy markets. By combining missiles, drones, regional alliances, and geographic advantages, Iran seeks to create a situation in which a stronger opponent may possess superior military power, but still faces high risks and unpredictable consequences during any prolonged confrontation. Another major factor shaping the struggle between Iran and the world's superpowers is economic pressure. In modern international conflicts, economic power can be just as important as military strength. Countries often attempt to weaken their rivals not only through weapons, but also through financial restrictions, trade limitations, and control over global markets. Iran has experienced this type of pressure for many years through a series of international sanctions imposed primarily by Western countries. These sanctions target multiple parts of Iran's economy. One of the most significant areas is the oil industry, which has traditionally been the backbone of Iran's national income. By restricting Iran's ability to sell oil freely on international markets, sanctions reduce the country's access to foreign currency and limit government revenues. This creates serious challenges for funding public services, maintaining infrastructure, and supporting economic development. Sanctions have also affected Iran's banking and financial systems. Many Iranian banks have been cut off from international financial networks, making it difficult for businesses to conduct global transactions or receive payments from foreign partners. This isolation reduces foreign investment and slows down trade with other nations. Companies that might otherwise work with Iran often avoid doing so because they fear penalties or restrictions from larger global economies. Another consequence of economic pressure is its effect on everyday life within the country. Inflation, currency devaluation, and rising prices can place heavy burdens on ordinary citizens. When a nation faces prolonged economic hardship, it can create political and social tensions, making it harder for governments to maintain stability and public confidence. However, economic pressure does not always produce quick results. Some countries adapt over time by developing alternative trade partnerships, strengthening domestic industries, creating new financial channels outside traditional systems. Iran has attempted to adjust by expanding trade with certain regional partners, increasing domestic production, and finding indirect ways to continue exporting resources despite restrictions imposed by powerful economies. Another crucial element in understanding tensions between Iran and global superpowers is the geopolitical importance of the region in which Iran is located. Geography often plays a powerful role in international politics, and Iran sits in one of the most strategically significant areas of the world. The country lies at the center of the Middle East, a region that has long been critical to global energy supplies, trade routes, and political alliances. One of the most important geographic features connected to Iran is the Strait of Hormuz. This narrow waterway links the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea. Despite its relatively small size, it serves as one of the most vital shipping routes on the planet. A large percentage of the world's oil exports travel through this corridor every day, transported by massive tankers moving from major oil-producing countries to markets in Asia, Europe, and beyond. Because so much global energy passes through this single route, any tension or disruption in the area can have immediate worldwide consequences. If shipping traffic slows down or stops due to military conflict, threats, or blockades, global oil prices can rise rapidly. Higher energy prices can affect transportation costs, electricity generation, industrial production, and even food prices in many parts of the world. Iran's geographic position gives it influence over the strategic waterway. While completely blocking the strait would be extremely difficult due to the presence of international naval forces, even the threat of disruption can create uncertainty in global markets. This uncertainty can pressure other nations to pay close attention to developments in the region and to consider diplomatic or military responses. The broader Middle East also contains numerous political rivalries, alliances, and security concerns. Conflicts involving Iran can easily affect neighboring countries, regional stability, and international partnerships. Because of this interconnected environment, a confrontation involving Iran and major powers rarely remains limited to a single country or issue. Another important dimension of the tension between Iran and the world's superpowers is the role of international alliances and global political relationships. In modern geopolitics, conflicts rarely involve only two isolated countries. Instead, nations operate within networks of partnerships, strategic agreements, and diplomatic alignments that influence how crises unfold. Iran's position in the international system is shaped not only by its own policies, but also by how other major powers choose to respond to regional developments. Countries such as Russia and China have often maintained diplomatic and economic relations with Iran, partly because they share interests in balancing the influence of Western powers in global politics. These relationships include cooperation in areas such as trade, energy, and international negotiations. In international organizations and forums, these countries sometimes support Iran's position on certain issues or advocate for diplomatic solutions rather than stronger sanctions or military pressure. However, these partnerships are complex and do not necessarily translate into direct military support. Major global powers typically act according to their own strategic interests, economic priorities, and regional calculations. Even when they maintain friendly relations with Iran, they may avoid becoming deeply involved in military conflicts that could escalate into wider international confrontations. This means that while Iran may receive political backing or economic cooperation from some countries, it cannot always rely on them for direct intervention in a crisis. At the same time, many Western nations maintain strong alliances with each other through long-standing security arrangements. Military cooperation, intelligence sharing, and joint defense planning allow these countries to coordinate responses when international tensions rise. Such alliances increase their collective influence and provide them with a wide network of military bases, technological resources, and logistical capabilities. This global landscape creates a situation where diplomacy, negotiations, and strategic partnerships often play just as important a role as military strength in determining how conflicts develop and how different countries position themselves during periods of international tension. The final and perhaps most complex factor in understanding a confrontation between Iran and global superpowers is the question of what winning actually means in modern international conflicts. In traditional warfare, victory was often defined by clear outcomes such as territorial conquest, the surrender of an opposing army, or the collapse of a government. In today's geopolitical environment, however, the idea of victory is far less straightforward. Military operations, economic pressure, political influence, and public perception all combine to shape the long-term outcome of international disputes. One important dimension is political stability. A country that faces external pressure but manages to maintain its governing institutions and internal control can claim a form of strategic survival. Governments that remain in power despite sanctions, diplomatic isolation, or military threats often present this endurance as evidence that they have resisted foreign influence. Maintaining internal unity, control over national institutions, and the loyalty of key political and military groups becomes a central objective during periods of intense international pressure. Another element is economic resilience. Even when sanctions or restrictions cause serious difficulties, countries sometimes adapt by developing alternative trade networks, strengthening domestic industries, or finding new economic partners. Over time, these adjustments can reduce the effectiveness of external pressure and allow a country to maintain a certain level of economic activity despite continued isolation from major global markets. Public opinion and international perception also play a significant role. Governments attempt to shape narratives about conflicts through media diplomacy and international organizations. If a country successfully portrays itself as defending its sovereignty or resisting external domination, it may gain sympathy or support from other nations and populations around the world. This can influence diplomatic negotiations, reduce international consensus against it, and create pressure for compromise rather than escalation. In such situations, the outcome of geopolitical struggles often depends less on decisive battlefield victories and more on endurance, adaptability, and the ability of each side to maintain its political, economic, and strategic position over time. In the end, the question, Iran vs. the superpowers who will truly win, does not have a simple answer. Military power may give superpowers a clear technological and strategic advantage, but history shows that wars and geopolitical struggles are rarely decided by weapons alone. Nations with smaller militaries have often survived powerful opponents by relying on strategy, geography, alliances, and political endurance. Iran may not possess the same level of advanced military systems, global alliances, or economic strength as the world's major powers. However, it has developed alternative strategies such as asymmetric warfare, regional influence, and the ability to create pressure in strategically important areas like the Persian Gulf. These factors allow it to challenge stronger opponents in ways that are difficult to predict or control. At the same time, superpowers maintain enormous advantages in technology, economic influence, intelligence networks, and international partnerships, their ability to coordinate military operations, apply economic pressure, and mobilize global alliances gives them a powerful position in any large-scale confrontation. Yet modern conflicts often produce outcomes where no side achieves a complete victory. Economic disruptions, political instability, humanitarian consequences, and global market shocks affect not only the countries involved, but also the wider international community. The longer such tensions continue, the more the costs spread across regions and societies. For this reason, the real measure of success may not be who defeats whom, but whether diplomacy, negotiation, and international cooperation can prevent a prolonged conflict from escalating further. In a world where global economies, security systems, and political alliances are deeply interconnected, the greatest victory may ultimately be avoiding a war in which everyone stands to lose.